Are you thinking about making a podcast? Spotify has a platform that lets you make one, and if I can figure it out, you definitely can too. You can create your own content all in one place for free with zero hangups and even earn money as soon as you get started. Spotify lets you record and edit episodes from your phone or computer so you can go mobile, just like I enjoy to do. My favorite thing about it is that you can create video episodes if you wish and upload them to wherever podcasts are heard. You can even set up subscriptions, or if you're like me, listener support options for listeners to help you grow. I 10 out of 10 recommend the Spotify for Podcasters app. Or, why don't you just step over to www.spotify.com/podcasters to get started on your own podcast. If you like what we do here at Off the Deep End and wish to support us, the best thing you can do is to share it on your social media, but also you can tell your mother, sister, cousin, auntie, the kid that's walking by you down the street, your gym crush, anybody about the episode you listened to and why you liked it. There's also another way to support us, and it's to go to the link posted in the description and on our Facebook page. And when you become a subscriber, you'll have access to subscriber-only content and ad-free listening for every single episode we put out. No matter what you choose to do, I do greatly appreciate you for tapping in, and please do reach out to our Facebook page so we can chat. Tell us what you feel, what you think, what you don't like, what I could improve upon. At the end of the day, this is meant to be a conversation starter. And just to be completely open and honest, every single penny that goes to the Off the Deep End program with subscribers is going to help other people by spreading the word via ads or getting new microphones so we can have more people at a time. And I really do appreciate every single listener. So thank you so much. I hope you have a great day and don't pass the pain. Welcome back, everybody. I'm super excited to be here with you today. So thank you for listening. Thanks for being here today. If you're going through a tough time, please do reach out to our Facebook page. I'd love to hear what you're going through. You shouldn't have to go through this alone. You don't need a licensed therapist to tell you that what's wrong with you. Sometimes you just need an ear, and I'm willing to be that. So please do reach out. Other than that, I wanted to take a second to put out a special shout out to all of my listeners. If you listen to this right now, the world's a better place because of you. So today we're going to get into it. Today we're going to be talking with Rick Kuss for Kitsap County Sheriff, and he is a political candidate, prior Navy, more importantly. He was a submariner, an officer. He's a teacher, an instructor. He's a leader, and he's somebody that I feel that can honestly do great things in his community. You don't need to be an expert in law enforcement to have a role in the community that involves leadership. And ultimately, I think he's doing a great job with his approach to things, what he wants to do. He doesn't want to run it like an insurgency. And I'm so excited that he's able to join me today. Unfortunately, there's some people out there who don't know who he is. So I hope you enjoy listening to this podcast. Rick Kuss is somebody who I believe in. And after this, you probably will too. Awesome. So we're live. I'm here with Rick, of course. You've already heard his introduction. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your career history?
So I started out enlisted in the United States Navy. I started from the bottom. I was brought to Bremerton, Washington to serve on an aircraft carrier. And then I was sent to prototype in New York. So in New York, there's a little like model reactor where you go and you operate the engine room and stuff. So I was an instructor there. So I was able to teach the next generation of sailors all about the plant. And then from there is where I applied to become an officer. So a naval officer, I applied to the Seaman to Admiral program.
Yeah, the STA.
And I got accepted. And then I ended up going back to my hometown for college. I went to the Michigan State, I went to the University of Michigan, ROTC, and I was a student at Eastern Michigan University. So I went there, did it like 3 years. I decided to get a degree in computer engineering technology. This way it would, kind of give me some engineering background as I proceed to go the route of a submarine officer and a submarine weapons officer, specifically with, nuclear reactors and then the nuclear missiles. So I want to have a good base in physics and all that stuff. And that really brought it to me together from there. And so after that, I, did several tours in the Navy. My most recent one was a submarine weapons officer on one of the strategic missile submarines out here in Bangor, Washington. And then my my last stop before retirement was to be the training director for the strategic weapons system for all of the Pacific Northwest submarines, and teaching COs and XOs about certain programs associated with it, and supervising a good amount of people to train the fleet so they're ready for any mission. And prior to getting out, I made sure that I went back to my passion, which is criminal justice, and I got my master's degree in criminal justice from Michigan State University.
Wow, that's a prestigious school as well.
Correct. Yep.
Well, you definitely have a long history of being able to deal with different stress-induced environments, with many different levels. Obviously, being a having to deal with weapons on a submarine, let alone being stationed on a submarine without going crazy
Oh
underwater
yeah.
for so long, it really takes a stout mind and a strong spirit to maintain that. So what kind of pushed you towards, other than obviously be getting a master's degree in your current field, what drove you towards law enforcement?
So when I was in high school, I was part of the Saline Police Department cadet program, which is out in Michigan where I grew up. And I did 4 years basically doing ride alongs, doing different programs to learn about the field. And the biggest thing they taught us then was community. And so we were every community event, the cadets were there interacting, helping people out, looking for if a kid went missing, we went and looked. We patrolled the streets. It was just a great time. And that's when I knew that's what I really wanted to do. And then I started my process of going to Lake Superior State University in Michigan for criminal justice. Back then, they were number one for the bachelor's degree in criminal justice, and I ended up joining the Navy at that point. But and here I am, 24 years later, retired from the Navy, and I'm like, okay, what's going on here? And I just see like crime on the rise, and it just seems like nobody knows what to do. They point the fingers, they blame everybody, and criminals are like, ha, we won. And so I'm like, coming out of the military, I'm like, no, you don't win. And so if someone needs to stand up, and so I'm going to do it. And I know there's a lot of good people that want to stand up, but based on other things, like I feel like this is the opportunity for me to stand up and for them to join me in this fight against crime and public safety here in Kitsap.
Mm. And you're definitely one person that really does to believe in this. Um, having having a background like yours, and with servitude, with community outreach, and actually being an active member of community rather than just a kind of a standalone, non involved member of community, it definitely builds lights a fire. Some would say inside of you.
Definitely. I think another aspect of community is like when you look at me and my opponent, when we have to fill out the voter pamphlet, there's a topic on community service. Now, for me, community service is going down on like the street and like interacting with the people, when just listening. And when they say these are the problems, you listen to them and you say, maybe I can help. This is what I could do. There was I was serving a homeless community a couple months ago, and they're like, we just got into the new Camp Pendleton place, but we live over here in Bremerton, and we don't know of a way to get there. So I gave him my phone number. I'm like, hey, uh, if you need a ride, call me, because like we're trying to help you out. So we need to like get like entangled with the community to
Mhm.
really understand the problems, and rather just uh, sit like on a board and decide, hey, this is the best rep for the community. Like you really need to get on the streets and really listen to people and understand their problems. You need to go where like normal people don't go. Like I feel like that's what's the big difference between me and like politicians. Politicians just kind of like look on the surface, and I'm
Mhm.
like, no, I really want to understand the community. And so I really appreciate, diving deep into that.
Yeah. Well, a lot of people, what I've seen from my perspective, and I've talked with a lot of people in the streets. I always was told from a young age, keep your ear to the streets and you'll know everything. I ask mothers, what has your school districts done to improve safety for active shooters? What have your community doing to stop the drug epidemics that we're having? What is your how are they lowering crime rates? And a lot of times, a lot of these politicians just look at stats, or if
Right.
they've been in office for more than 8 years, they're usually pretty comfortable. They say, hey, I'm comfortable in my position. I got good ties in the political world. They kind of lose touch with society. And
I
I
agree.
think that happens to sometimes, sadly, it does happen to a lot of our police officers and our law enforcement officers who are really important. They're really important. The job is not being necessarily an insurgent riding around in your Hummer overseas. We can compare that to people who are deployed. Sometimes riding around in a cop car, you getting out and handing a sticker or high fiving a kid playing shooting some hoops with a child might make the biggest difference in that person's life in removing that stigma that the law enforcement community and the civilians need to be separate at all, because we're all here for the same purpose, to raise our children in a safe environment.
Right. I met someone from one of the tough neighborhoods in Bremerton, and they were didn't really know if they wanted to meet with me or not, but they're like, "Well, he's not part of law enforcement, so let me go talk to him." And so I met up with a person, and they're like, "Hey, I got kids, and we just if we see police, we go the other way. We do not want to talk to them." And I was like, "Well, what do you recommend?" And their response was like, "When you go to have community events, don't be the law enforcement officer in the uniform and have the badge that represents enforcement. No, come in your plain clothes and just interact people. Like if there's a game going on, stop by for like a game of pickup ball or something like that, just
Mm,
as a normal person to build that relationship with the community." And that's what I'm definitely looking at doing it in.
that's very good. That's very good. I think that's so important. So what are some of the major issues you're running into over there in your county, and what is your plan to change those?
So the big thing is public safety. And with public safety, they made some bills with legislation that made it really limiting on uh, law enforcement, such as the police pursuit bill. So
Mm.
someone does something and the law enforcement officer doesn't know if they have probable cause or not. So the criminal just gets away with whatever crime they're committing and they just drive away. And law enforcement's like, oh, we can't do anything. And then it's just free reign for the criminal to get away. Car theft is on the rise like crazy. I did get an email from one of the Washington State today because I requested some data on that, and they had like over 900 in Kitsap from January to August. 900 over 900 cars stolen in Kitsap, and I'm like, it's just
Whoa.
cars are getting stolen, catalytic converters are getting stolen, and criminals feel like they have the upper hand. And
Mm,
what I intend to do about that problem is shifting to proactive policing. So a good analogy that I heard is like when a like some threat is going to like a beehive or something, all the bees come out at once and they all like, defend that nest,
mhm.
and that beehive is just defended. And then with that should be the same way with in criminal justice with law enforcement. If you use the resources of everyone's time, and I'm talking from the bottom, the newest guy on the force to the sheriff himself, if everybody puts their effort into it and time is part of the resource source accountable, and you use proactive measures like hotspot policing, where you're looking at where's crime occurring, what times it occurring, and you're just really diving into it, you can really solve the problem. And part of the issue is we're training the leaders are training followers.
Mm,
Leaders need to be training people to be leaders, so they're like the lead of their own area, they're the lead of their own problem solving approach. And with proactive policing, each chain in the criminal justice link is all going after proactive policing. It isn't up to just the patrol guy to make sure he patrols an area more often. It comes from the top down. The other problems that we're seeing, drugs, drugs like crazy. So fentanyl, again with legislation, they made fentanyl basically legal. What it actually is a misdemeanor now with 2 cases of diversion. So you get diverted twice, and then you can get arrested on the third time. And the problem that we're having kids in Kitsap County and other counties and cities in the state are not doing this. So specifically Kitsap County, the law enforcement aren't holding people accountable for the how many were arrested once, or how many were diverted once, how many were diverted twice, and then how many were arrested on the third time. And myself and the community members have asked the sheriff himself about that number, and there is no number because it's not being done. No one's being
mm,
held accountable. So criminals, this is gonna like blow people's minds, but it shouldn't. Criminals need to be held accountable. Like imagine holding people accountable for their actions.
mm,
That's what needs to happen. And then again, like if the prosecutor says, hey, we're not gonna like press charges on people with misdemeanors, or we'll give them $100 fine or whatnot. No, they need to be held accountable. So I'm all about helping people. So we have the 2 diversion attempts, in law. So let's help them. Let's get them diverted. And there are resources out there.
mhm.
Several different community places come up to the times when I'm serving with the homeless saying, hey, we can help you here. We can help you there. So it's available. We just need to follow up on what we said we're going to do.
Absolutely. And accountability and leadership are two things that are completely intertwined. You cannot be an effective leader if you don't respect others. Demand respect through your actions, not just necessarily with what you say. Like, oh, look at me, I got a badge, I do what I want,
Right.
right? You have to demand respect through your actions. Leadership 101 is respect. Respect is number one. You treat your subordinates like they're gonna respond well to that every single time.
Right, and it seems like now when you ask people to talk about leadership one-on-one, like you just said, it seems like leadership is gained through experience. Well,
Mm-mm.
you can get experience or you can get leadership through experience if you have a really good leader. But the
Mhm.
problem is if bad leaders are, teaching the new generation bad tactics, then that experience means nothing.
100%. And a big issue that's going on right now throughout the United States right now, especially for training budgets, for our law enforcement officers. So you'll see the news do it. They get on their tangents of we need better police training, and everyone can agree to that. Every time
Right,
you as a so if you if, hypothetically speaking, you become the next sheriff of your county, which I really do hope. I've listened to other people's opinions and what they have to say, and I have to say I'm thoroughly unimpressed. And I try to judge on people honestly.
right,
I'm not a superstar of being a great person, but I try to look at things from an honest perspective. And I can't
right,
say I'm too impressed with what the current standards are. And
right.
everything should always be subject to improvement. And training is one of the best ways to show your subordinates as a leader, as a sheriff, to show every single deputy that you really do care about their perfection and their professionalism and them coming home safely is with training. Do you plan on increasing the current method of training in that area?
Yes, so this is something that I'm really passionate about. So in 2001, that's when I was first like, you're the training petty officer as enlisted, and
Hmm.
then going to be an instructor and doing with training plans at my shore duty. And then, as a leader, we're always responsible for our training plan. Then being the training director, having to make sure people are conducting it correctly and auditing it, it's very important. So what I need to know is what's going on right now. So of course, not everything's available to the public, and I've submitted so many public requests for other things. So I
Hmm.
think I'm going to have to find out what's really going on when I get elected, because I believe that training is not just listening to somebody and saying you're trained, right?
Yeah.
Training has a full circle. So it's like,
Hmm.
if you're training, how do you know that training was effective?
Mm.
How are these people tested on it? And then you keep coming back to it. Do they still retain that knowledge? It's a continual thing, not a one and done. So like last year there was an issue with First Amendment, a lack of knowledge and First Amendment rights for the Kitsap Sheriff's Office, and a big lawsuit with someone, holding up signs in a public park and something happening. And one of the corrective actions was the Kitsap County Sheriff's Office had to do training. And so I really hope that's not like, okay, we did the training, now move on. No, like there's
Mm-mm.
going to be a new generation of people. How do we know the new generation of officers have that same standard? How do we know that next year that they didn't forget about that? We have to keep coming back to it and keep assessing where we're at. And so,
Mhm.
yeah, that's a huge thing.
And at I was an instructor at a certain point. I did a lot of I kind of had to conduct my own training because the training was so insufficient. They put me in charge of quite a few people, and I was only 21 years old, telling 30-year-olds and everybody who was supposed to be teaching me, who decided it wasn't important enough to teach me. I saw that lack of concern for their junior sailors being taught, and so I made a decision. I was going to study my ass off and ultimately advance to the point where I could be in charge, and then I conducted training often. Training is one of the most important things, not just because it shows people you care, like I said earlier, but it really makes you calm and in the situations where you don't
Oh,
want it
yeah.
to happen. Doing unrep on an aircraft carrier between two ships, everything goes wrong. You have sailors. I have sailors' lives on the line immediately all the time. I've
Right.
diverted from a lot of snapback issues with um, some nylon snapping and trying to take legs off of my sailors and having to shove them out of the way, get involved. All these things happen pretty regularly, and you don't rise to the occasion. You fall to your level of training. So
Right.
I know a lot of different police departments are doing things like the sheepdog response program, where they come out and they do the training. They held one last year, and I attended, and it was really awesome. A pistol course that I enjoyed with them. Unfortunately, the other courses were already filled up, and I'm not a Leo, so I couldn't do the law enforcement one. But a lot of
Right.
different police departments and sheriff's offices are adopting former Green Berets and former Navy SEALs and former Army Rangers, and having them come over here and train them so that they can make a good decision in that moment where you have to. So sadly, it happens. We have to use deadly force sometimes as law enforcement people in the law enforcement. We do. So that is one of the best things. Stress inoculation, shooting under pressure, having to do active shooter drills, understanding just literally just walking the schools in your district at nighttime as a group, talking about what not to do if something's going wrong, talking about what to do if you hear those shots ring out. You're not going to know in that hallway because it's going to reverberate. You're not going to know exactly where that shooter's at, so you have to clear every room quickly. You have to make sure these kids are safe.
Right.
Training is the key.
Right. And one thing that meant a lot to me throughout my tour in the Navy was when, people are doing training when they're not directed to. So
Hmm.
that's on when individuals are like, I feel like I don't know enough about this. Hey, can we have training on this? So they're asking for it. Or the junior sailors or the leaders who are like, you know what, we're not directed to do this, but I want us to be better in this area. So let's do
Hmm.
training on it. And then they come up to me and say, sir, we just did training on this. And that's kind of just makes me feel like, everything is starting to click and run smoothly.
100%. So what other issues are you looking at in your area that aren't being dealt with properly, and what is your recommended approach in the future that you plan on taking?
Okay, so a big issue, and I talked a little bit about the drugs, but the homeless encampments. So it comes into a problem when we have to look at the root cause of the homeless. And so this is where I'm coming from this at the angle that, and most people don't know this. They think of the sheriff as a chief of police or he's someone that's patrolling a beat or something like that. No, the sheriff is actually in the RCWs, the law, the chief executive officer of the county. And so he's
Hmm.
responsible for all this stuff. So he shouldn't be behind a desk just worried about, local law enforcement and what's going on with that. That's part of the job. But another part about it is county-wide, like looking at this stuff. So the root cause of homelessness, a big part of it, there's several reasons, but a big part is affordable housing. And so Kitsap County and most of Washington, right, based on new taxes and everything going up, the prices are skyrocketing. And people
Hmm.
in the middle or lower class, they just can't afford to continue living in the same place they're living. I was canvassing and I went to one neighborhood up by Kingston, and it was the one of the people told me at the door, they're like, I just got info from our landlord that they're raising rent $800 a month. Now,
Jesus
that is a
Christ, that's enough to
huge.
break somebody.
So how can someone even so you can see where we're going with like how
Hmm.
homelessness is created in certain situations like that. And so affordable housing isn't going. So should there be something that caps the rate of rent increase? Portland does it. So the city of Portland has a thing where they can't raise it too much. So other cities should be like doing similar stuff where let's not just make it everybody, you're evicted, you can't afford it, you're out, or asking for help in different situations. But the homelessness, when they get in tough situations and they find themselves that there's, maybe I can't cope with this, and they turn to drugs as one of the short-term corrective actions to kind of just like to alleviate the problem. So we need to get those people help. We need to provide them resources. And with that, there's also several of the homeless that are dealing with a mental health crisis.
Hmm.
A lot of our vets that are coming out of the military, they're having mental health issues, and I feel like in some cases they're not being treated adequately. So what can I do with that? So there's a documentary which I love, which is on HBO called Crisis Cops. And
Okay.
there's a crisis intervention team, which we have in Kitsap, but it's not like at all the same mechanism that they are using in San Antonio. And so what it happens is there's two plainclothes cops. They're in an unmarked car, and when a mental health call comes in, they respond to it in plain clothes. And they go there in a non-threatening way. If someone was like trying to jump off a bridge or something, they just sit down and they listen. And the person says, "Hey, this is what's going on in my life." And the most importantly, the officers just listen and they want to help. And so at the end, they end up taking them to a crisis management center. So they don't go directly to jail. They go to a crisis management center. And this center basically determines, okay, what kind of help does this person need? And there's actual professionals there, and there are resources from the community.
Hmm.
So I, I'm pretty confident, as a CEO. with like, let's not go the government route because I just see red tape everywhere we go now being introduced to politics. Let's get community to step up. And I know they want to help the problem. All
Mm,
these meetings that I've been going to, community members are standing up saying, we can help them. And just having someone that steps up as a leader and says, okay, let's coordinate all this. Let's make this. How much is it going to take to do something similar? Let's not reinvent the wheel. Let's reach out to the different cities that are doing this and see what we can do. And so I think that's a
mhm.
big part of, you know, the job of the sheriff in Kitsap County as the CEO.
Absolutely. I love your approach with that. I really do. I think there's never been a more important time to stop these things. What is crime? Sorry, what does poverty, usually lead to? Poverty leads to crime. If I'm broke
Right.
and I have nothing, I start to go into survival mode. So I'm going to do whatever I need to do, and that's not just for me. That's for every human being. At the end of the day, we are very primal things, and we will do pretty much anything to survive when it comes down to it. We can't expect people to be living in tents and living in really really horrible environments to not do whatever they can do to get by, even if it involves hurting other people in their community.
Right. And this is where the lack of accountability comes in because where they get to that point now in their life, and now they're seeing all their friends, their different members of their community not getting in trouble for doing it. And they're like, oh, so this is the right answer. So it's reinforcing a negative behavior. And
Mhm.
it's just something that we gotta change. We gotta hold people accountable and help them.
Absolutely, brother. So I was really, really excited for today, and for this whole week, honestly, because I cannot wait to listen to the debate between you and the current sheriff. I thought I was going to get a show. I think debates are great. Being transparent to the community that you represent, your constituents, the people that elected you, and showing them an honest side. And you're not calling this guy a bad guy. You're coming out and looking to install new leadership and move in a different direction. Obviously, people wouldn't listen to a word you said if they thought things were going great. I have family members who had houses robbed in that area. I drove through Kitsap County just the other day. I work sometime in Kitsap County, and I get a little bit uncomfortable with some of the things that I'm seeing there. And I've asked a couple of community members at the last event I went to how they feel about what's going on in there and not happy. Why didn't this guy want to come out and talk with you?
So this is actually the fourth time we tried to do something. I've gotten
Mm.
invitations. Every invitation I usually accept. There's only one I have not accepted. It's because it was a Zoom only debate, and I feel like having the community in an environment where they can
Yeah.
see both of the candidates interacting and have
Hmm.
connection and
With no
communication.
notes, just hold hands, sing
Right,
kumbaya, you
right.
know?
Right. Yeah. So this one was a it was a debate that was scheduled. We both agreed to it. And then the day of, I get word that he canceled because it's Yom Kippur. And like I'm 100% like if there it's a good reason not to do the debate, not a good reason not to do the debate. But the problem is like it's the day of. So
Mm.
I'm pretty sure it's on the calendar every year. And so when you suddenly drop that, like I can't do the debate, it just brings out, there's got to be something going on. Like, why won't he debate me? And so several people, I was communicating with some of the Democratic Party members, some chairs from around Kitsap County. They were like, "Hey, is this debate happening or not?" And I was like, "I think it is. I'm going to show up." And then going back and forth with the moderator, he's like, I think it's going to happen. Then they end up doing an emergency board meeting and told me that nope, it's canceled because he does not want to show up for out of respect for the holiday. So again, like if you commit
Mm.
to something, do it. Make sure what you commit to is right before you do it. And I want to have me and him next to each other in front of the community, and the
Mhm.
community ask any questions they want. And I
Yeah.
want it to be fair. And I feel like that's something that every candidate deserves, and I feel like that's the community deserves that as well.
Mhm. And obviously, if you are elected sheriff, you're not going to be saying, "All right, well, you're fired. Don't you have no job now?" You don't just cast this person on the street. There's really no reason why he should fear being involved in a conversation with another human being, especially somebody who's you know, uh, currently in his jurisdiction. He's supposed to be a community representative, and he won't even talk with you. That's kind of confusing to me. I've never been afraid to have a conversation with anybody publicly or not, because honesty is the best policy. And your people who you want to vote for you or not, they want to know the truth. They want to hear what you have to say. And you can, if even if he was BSing or you were BSing, at least show up.
Right. Yeah. Like, and yeah. So if, okay, when I do win, like, I'm not going to be like, I'm not going to hire you as
Mm-hmm.
whatever position. Like, there's a lot of valuable resources there. But right now, what Kitsap needs is a new leadership direction. And I am that leader. And so he
Mm-hmm.
has valuable assets. He's a nice guy. And I'm not saying anything bad about him, but I'm just saying, hey, commit to what you're doing and I'll have a spot for you on my team. It's just not the main spot.
Yeah, and that's okay. We can
Right.
all, especially as community servants, it's important that we don't turn into politicians and become egotistical to where we can't be, have these come to Jesus meetings where we say, all right, it's time to just have a conversation with somebody. What can we do better? As a
Right.
leader, I was always told to ask, what could I be doing better? And I will never ever be subpar. Um, we should all be in fear of being average or staying the same the next day, especially when it comes to leadership.
Yeah, another thing that I found out from some people on social media was, so my social media is, it's anybody can go on and comment. There's several discussions, arguments, the crazy thing with social media.
Oh yeah.
But his is limited to only friends of posters can see what was posted. So
Mm.
if the general public want to see what the community is seeing on his Facebook page, they cannot, which why are we trying to
What?
hide things? Let's just be transparent. If
Mhm.
people have questions, let's answer them. Let's see what the community is talking about.
Yeah. And as an elected official, if you have a social media account that evolves in community correspondence, you're talking with people. You want these conversations to be seen.
Right.
Censorship is never something I've loved. If I could be anything in life, I'm pretty much a 1970s liberal. I love open communication. I'm not really for warmongering, but however, I do think we definitely need to be emboldened as Americans and tell the truth. And
Right.
when you limit who can see what you're talking about, that is a form of censorship, and I don't necessarily agree with that. I think
Right.
honesty is the best policy.
Yeah, I agree.
Mm-mm. So I know that this has been a topic of discussion, and I want to get into the kind of the nitty and the gritty. Some people have been criticizing you for not being a law enforcement uh, up to this point. Regardless of whether you served in the military, they kind of threw that aside. Regardless of you been in leadership positions your whole life, that they threw that aside. Regardless of you being community involved, they threw that aside, and they are making comments saying that you're not a Leo, and you shouldn't really have a position that says the word sheriff on there. From my understanding, you don't need to be in law enforcement to have a position of leadership, and a piece of paper doesn't necessarily qualify you, or years of experience in street crime doesn't necessarily qualify you to be looking overseeing how everything runs. What is your take on that?
So if we look at the qualifications of the sheriff in the Washington RCW, the Revised Code of Washington. So what it says is the sheriff has to go to a basic law enforcement academy or equivalent within 12 months of taking office. So if we look at that, we go, okay, so what does the Washington State Criminal Justice Training Commission view as an equivalent, and when is this? When could I go? So in December, there's a course that I will go to that meets the requirements to be equivalent. So there we go. I meet the requirements per the state law. So the sheriff is a constitutional office. So Article 2, Section 5 of the Washington State Constitution says he's a constitutional officer.
Mm,
So he's the only law enforcement officer that's constitutional. He's not a chief of police. He is not a patrol cop. He's not a deputy. He's not required to have that. He is the chief executive officer of the county. And so a lot of people, when you look at it that way, you're like, how many CEOs do you know that, like, well, they started out at the bottom of that corporation. Some of them come from leadership from other entities. And so the CEO of a county or corporation needs to have very strong leadership skills. And I tell you, the what the military has given me, I feel is far more than what I could have learned, doing 20 years and maybe having bad leadership or bad experience.
mm.
But I know confidently that my leadership skills are trained among the best of them in the United States Navy, and so I'm happy to have this discussion with any person. It is the number one question that gets asked, and a lot of times when I sit down and explain to them what the sheriff actually is, and go through the various like references and resources about sheriffs, and when I talk to sheriffs outside of Kitsap, um, a lot of them are like, yeah, here's an example of this person who was a great sheriff. He owned a business and he shifted to the sheriff because crime was just soaring through the roof, and he changed our county. So
Mm.
there's so many positive examples of this, and a lot of people just want to look to the the negative rather than look at, wait a second, this guy may be right. And so I think what we're learning from my opponent, he's trying to his main tactic is just to attack my LEO experience, right? Saying I don't have any, and he's getting his
Mm.
predecessors to just back him up. And part of my thing is like, there is a good old boy network, and I'm not saying this.
It's the
Active
truth. It is the truth.
active deputies are telling me this. Retired deputies are telling me this. There's a good old boy network, and you got to be like groomed to be this guy. And I'm like, you know what? We the people are fed up with that. We the
Hmm.
people want someone that's going to change things and look out for each citizen of this county. And so that's where I come from, and that's what I hope to talk. And I like again, I said my phone number is out there for everybody to call me, and I'm getting phone calls from some. Some are just like, wait a second, you. A lot of them are like, it's you. I'm like, I told you it would be. So yeah, so 360-768-0911. It's my phone number. And if you call it, I will answer or I will get back to you if I'm busy, but it doesn't go to anybody else. So please, like I am your so the sheriff should be, the direct representative of the people, the one-stop shop. Right now, if you try to reach the other guy, I don't think that you'll be able to get to hold of him anytime soon because that's what I'm hearing from his own party. So
Mm.
yeah.
And that's really frustrating too. I see in your background of like obviously no one else is going to see the video footage for this. I see you have two American flags in your background. You have looks like naval commendations, maybe a NAM or two back there behind you on the wall. I'm not so sure. And I look at everything around you. You have books and stuff like that. uh, are you actively looking to further your knowledge instead of stay the same? I know a lot of people when they get into a position of political power or representative power, they stay the same. They decide, well, I'm here now, so I don't need to stop. What do you? Obviously, you have a master's in every single facet of law, and what you're quoting RCWs off the top of your head. That's pretty amazing, if you ask me. You understand and you've read the Constitution and you want to represent it and represent the people. What are you doing to further your knowledge to better yourself as a candidate against these disgusting remarks, in my opinion, trying to discredit you from not having a badge on your chest, pretty much? Like you
So
wore your last name on your chest in the military. No one ever should have anything to say about your service to this country or to the community. You served on a nationwide level. You didn't just serve in one community, and that's something that I try to not put out there too much for society to hear. But sometimes it needs to be said. Don't criticize someone else just because they don't have the same experience with you. You just because you didn't serve with a gun on your hip doesn't mean you haven't served the country. Your servitude should be honored and respected every single time, especially as a veteran.
right. Yeah. So that's one of the things like I always like even when I was like, hey, you get a 10% military discount, I was like, I don't want to go out and brag that I did any of that stuff. And most service members are like that. Most vets
Mm-hmm.
are like, we're proud, we're very prideful. We're proud that we did our time and we served our country. But like I don't want to take advantage of that because that's
Yeah.
part of my heart and stuff like and what's shifting from military to jumping right into politics. I'm like starting to get criticized. I've gotten criticized because of my faith as a Christian. I've gotten criticized because of military leadership. I'm like,
Mm.
all these attacks on me I've never seen before. And like, I feel like before you can attack someone that's been in the service and or was a leader in the military, you
Mm-hmm.
should probably understand what they've been through and what it actually means. And as far
Especially in your craft as a submarine officer, it's
right,
much different. I can tell you this right now. I want no part in the structure, in the difficulty, in the level of mental stability you have to operate underwater for literally months. I don't have that in me. And more power to you for that. I
Right, but okay, so for the knowledge thing, like, okay, so my passion is gaining knowledge. Like now, like when I retired, like I was never big into like reading fiction books and stuff like that, and I would
Mhm,
read what's required and a little more to do the job and do it well. But now I found my true passion is like I've given up like a lot of my uh activities, my hobbies, because now like studying has become more of what I'm passionate about. And so I decided to work on my PhD. So I'm working on a PhD in criminal justice leadership currently. And I'm also studying case law. And I joined like the American Bar Association, the National
mhm,
Sheriff's Association. So it gives me so many resources. So now when someone says, the sheriff can't do that or that, I can quote a Supreme Court case and say, well, how about you look up this Supreme Court case and then we'll have a discussion before you continue down. So, and I feel that's important, especially when like if the sheriff's having a discussion with the prosecutor and the prosecutor's saying, we can't do this. It's not just the prosecutor that's required to know the law. The sheriff's required to know the law as well. And they're saying that show me a county with lawlessness, and I'll show you a sheriff that doesn't know the law. And
mhm,
like, I am continue like tonight, I'll be studying for a couple hours on just some different cases and stuff, making sure I understand them correctly. And then once you study, what I love is there's kind of like this game where once you open up like a Supreme Court case or something, it'll reference another Supreme Court case. So what you could do is
mhm.
you spend look time looking for that, and then you combine them all. Then you get on like a whiteboard and you're just going back and forth on how to connect the two. And like I've gotten really excited about this. My wife has seen me over the last week just being like extremely joyful about like academics, which wasn't truly the case, like 10 years ago. But now that I'm I feel like knowledge is truly power and it's something I can do to, help kids out, especially with the crime going on.
Absolutely, I love that. Furthering your knowledge is one of the most important things that anybody could do. You should never. I've some pretty strong dyslexia, so I spend time doing audiobooks and then taking
Right.
notes in my free time. I don't like spend too much time reading
Right.
because it takes me so long to do, and I don't want to get embarrassed sometimes. So,
Yeah, yeah.
but ultimately, every time that I listen to audiobook, that I spend the time researching court documents myself, so I can understand the RCWs because there's a lot. There's a lot of
There is.
simple stuff. You have to understand the Constitution. Does your state constitution support or go against the Constitution, the federal Constitution? There's so much that goes
Right.
into it,
Yeah,
especially
there
as a
is.
gun owner in myself. Um, there was one final question that I really wanted to ask. This has been a issue that's very dear to me. All my listeners know that I've had family who and friends who have sadly passed away due to active shooters in America. It's a big issue right now. Um, what would be your one suggestion you have about how we as different communities, obviously you're not the person running for sheriff in my county, but what do you think, just an idea, a way to move forward, what do you think we can do to combat active shooters in America?
So that's a good question. The Department of Justice, Community Oriented Police Services, and the National Sheriff's Association, which I'm a member of. So this is how I found out that that resource is available by joining different organizations.
Hmm.
They came together and they developed a plan to present to the Attorney General, looking at statistics and response time and school safety is very important. It's a top concern and what to do about it. So what they do is they broke school safety down into two categories: physical safety and emotional safety. And
Mm,
so physical safety involves like having your school resource officer in there, and that's not the only thing you do. A lot of local sheriffs or chiefs of police are like, hey, we'll just put a school resource officer, LEO, in the school, so we have someone there. Well, that's only like 1/11th of what their plan was as a organization. So what they plan to do is, have the physical safety. So talk about barriers. There's one instance of an active shooter where from the outside in, if there was a higher strength glass, that person's life would been saved. So talking about facility structure, direct line of communication.
mhm.
A lot of the people in schools, what the students do is they call their parents. So they spend time talking to their parents, and then their parents call 911. So there's a delay in response time, and every second counts in an active shooter. And we in the military, we train on. I had every time we were in port, we had to do weekly uh, drills such as those. And so
Mhm,
our response time, we had time metrics where we had to get there and apprehend the threat within a certain amount of time.
mhm,
And so law enforcement should be doing these drills. They
mhm,
should be doing them routinely. And then you look at the other side, the emotional safety is there are signs in most of these cases. There are signs that, looking back at like as the Monday morning quarterback, we could have, okay, if we would have done this, if we would have done that. Well, that plan is outlined in this thing. Like what having a resource available in the school where there is a mechanism for anonymous reporting where students that could be friends with someone are like, I just don't feel right about my friend. He's doing this. They have that ability to go report it, and there is no like
mhm,
let's bring them into the police, all that stuff. It's just an anonymous reporting. There's talks about social media monitoring. So if a students making a public post, and I'm not going in the invasion of privacy route. This is public stuff, and there are signs that point to that. We can look more into it. Uh, it's just you want leaders, you want teachers that have that open door policy where they are approachable. So
mhm.
when you look at people, and I often did this throughout my time in the military, when you're looking at leaders and you're like, man, that guy looks so angry. If I had an issue, I would never go talk to him. I
Ugh,
want leaders to be like, man, he's so inviting. I feel like I can talk to him about everything. But putting emotional and physical together, there's plans already outlined. And again, we need to not reinvent the wheel. So the local law enforcement who feel like we got to come up with a plan and get people together to strategize this, have like a mind think situation. Let's look at what's already been done for us and let's follow through with that and how we can make each one of those topics apply for our school safety.
mhm. I love that. How you broke down, um, try to find anonymous reporting lines. I think that I was talking about with one of the schools here in Linwood that there should be an anonymous phone. You can go to 7-Eleven right now. It takes like $25 when I was in high school. I don't know about now, but you can get one of those little burner phones and
Oh
you
yeah,
can charge it and leave it at the front desk of the school, or keep it on the principal's body all day. An anonymous text, and everybody has a number. It's posted all anonymous and posted on the wall. You can even write it down. It probably take 10 pieces of printer paper, and you can write down that number on the wall, and anybody can anonymously report a number if there is a situation that threatens the safety of the school. And you know what? You don't, and you saying that, you vocalizing that will not be used as a penalize and outing you, saying that, hey, you're a snitch, or it was
right,
a false alarm and you messed up, you freaked out for no reason. It shouldn't be like that at all.
right.
I know that a lot of people are into armed security. I have a buddy down in Thurston County that's working towards different armed security approaches that involve with veterans and stuff like that. People that are vetted safe by the VA, who have done psychological screening is part of his plan in the future, and I really like that. But there's a lot of different ways to approach it, and I think that how you broke it down and how they are breaking it down on the national, I think the sheriff's association you were talked about,
Yep.
the physical and emotional are very important. Emotionally, a lot of kids are broken. We have kids in broken homes. We have people who are going through tough times and don't know how to necessarily deal with it. And sometimes if we don't apply that in a positive way, we strike out. And so it is very important. I do agree. How do you feel about the future of the county that you're going to be representing for sure?
So I feel like we're at like a fork in the road, and so we have two paths. One is to continue down the same path,
Mm,
and I don't want to even look at the outcome of that because it will give me nightmares. Then there's the other path where we come together as a community under leadership that will unite us, and we make a turnaround, make a change, and crime goes down. Families feel safe walking trails in their local parks again. And it's just something that, all of us can come together and be thankful we made the right decision.
mm. Amen. Well, I love it, man. Well, thank you so much for your time, Rick. I know that everybody in that district that's related to me is definitely voting for you. They
I
cannot stand
appreciate
what's
it.
going on right now. And they love your message, and they're going to listen to this and love it as well. So thank you so much for your time. If there's anything you want to say to the people that are going to listen to this who are still on the fence about voting for you, do you want to take this time to say that?
Sure. I know there's a lot. I met someone today that was on the fence about voting for me because as a on the ticket, I'm a Republican, and Republican right now is confusing a lot of people. People don't know their identity as a Republican. And
Mhm.
I'm saying just come talk to me. I served in the military for 24 years, and I'm not an extremist. I am a moderate person who wants to help people in need and also hold people accountable. And if you have any questions, again, my number is 360-768-0911. We can have a normal conversation, go grab a coffee, and like that's my heart is to be connected to each and every member of this community.
I love that. I love that, and that's what true leadership it is for all the listeners out there. Having a R or D next to your name on a voting ballot really doesn't mean much because there's we have a political spectrum, and a lot of people aren't extremists, and a lot of people can be
Right,
painted that way, and it's
right,
really it doesn't help if we just say, oh, they have an R next to their name or a D next to their name. Oh, they must be an extremist, or they must be a MAGA
right,
Republican or a far left lunatic or whatever, right? That doesn't help us build a community. What it does
right.
is open communication, which you are the only person for some reason in your county that wants to do. So I
Yeah,
really love that you're open like that. I'll make sure to put your number in the description as well for this.
awesome.
But thank you so much for your time. I think you're a thank you for your service, first of all. I would have loved to serve with you, even though I'd be a little bit nervous about being in subs.
Oh
But
yeah.
there's a lot of pressure involved, a lot of numbers and stuff like that. So, but thank you so much for your time. And yeah, if that isn't enough of a reason to vote for Rick, I don't know what is.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
We spent a lot of time on this podcast talking about mental health, but I want to talk about physical health for a second. There's nothing more uplifting and confidence boosting than looking in the mirror and seeing exactly what you want looking back at you. The person I trust to make sure that's happening, no matter if I'm going through an injury or not, is Brian Click. He's my friend, mentor, coach, and now one of our sponsors here at Off the Deep End. Head over to the link in the description and check out why I choose him. All over his Instagram and his website, you will be seeing the different clients who've worked with him in the past, whether it's bodybuilding or just maintaining a healthy lifestyle or working towards a certain goal in a sport and making sure you make weight. Brian is a guy I trust for every single different category and facet that fitness surrounds. There's nothing more important than liking what you see in the mirror and liking how you feel when you wake up every day. So head over to his website and get this process started.